Well, where DeVry and University of Phoenix come into the picture is when we don't have enough classes to offer students, and when students can't get into the classes. And rather than address the policies of the college on how they let students into classes and giving professors different methods of picking and choosing which students get into the class, which is to say students who really want to get in the class and students who really need to get in the class, as opposed to, and potentially also students who will continue on in the class and excel in the class, as opposed to students who have only a marginal interest in being in the class who will potentially drop over the course of the semester. Instead of addressing policies like these, which have become very minor in the consciousness of the trustees, they haven't addressed those issues, and that leads to students who desperately need classes and can't do without them not being able to get into classes. And once that happens, some of them who don't have, for example, people taking care of them, who can't sit around and wait to start their lives, who need their education now, go to private universities because their doors never close, because they have a business model, because they are not offered by the state and they are not community services.
Right.
So they never close their doors because they can profit off of you. So then they're forced to go to these private universities. And the Board of Trustees is saying, we want part of that market. We want to access that market of students who want to go to SMC, but who aren't being paid for by the state. We want to tap into that market. So Santa Monica College is saying, we want to decrease the number of students that we're sending to these private universities by letting them pay for classes at SMC. Mm-hmm. That's the way that mm-hmm. they're getting in the business of being a private university. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is, they say a lot of things like, we've structured these fees so that these classes pay only for themselves. But the funny thing is that the numbers don't match up. These classes, at the rates that they're proposing, would actually take a lot more in than it would require to run the class. And they haven't put anything in their proposals to keep that money paying for more students to get classes at state subsidized rates. They're not addressing this huge discrepancy because they say that in some ways this will open the doors to unprivileged students when privileged students step up and take these classes. But on the other hand, they're not giving themselves any accountability in the program, and that's what they could expect to have added if they allowed their constituents to have some say in how the program would be implemented, and they don't want that. What Harrison described is not what's happening now. What Harrison described as what needs to happen is not what the Board of Trustees are doing now, and arguably not what they plan to do in the future. The narrative from a dispassionate perspective has been the Board of Trustees and doctors saying, we're interested in implementing a program. So they took it through their own body and began to develop it. When the campus community found out about this program that they wanted to implement, they reacted poorly to it. They said, we want to have a hand in the creation of this, and they said, we don't want you to have a hand in the creation of this. We believe we've addressed it adequately, and we have a great plan, and we want to implement it because our priority is helping students now. Then they decided to have their actions back up their priorities and say that because we're focused on implementing this program within our own processes, we're not going to involve you in what we're doing. That created a problem. They decided not to involve the shared governance process, and so when they took the power away from the shared governance process, the constituents of that process exited that process and used other means to be involved. That created a logistical problem of space, and that created the logistical problem of enforcing space, which created an incident. That incident led to widespread attention on the issue and finally got enough voices involved where the trustees suddenly became beholden to the public. Because previously they were able to make the decision that they wanted to make, which is, we have a great plan, we're going to stick to it and make it happen on schedule. Suddenly they were not able to do that because the public eye was on them. And
accountability.
As soon as they held that large meeting at which they were able to project themselves as extremely reasonable people who align with the public and who care deeply about the public, once they had cultivated that public image, they were able to return to their original plan. And the point at which we are now is they've postponed the implementation of their plan until after summer. But they have not changed whatsoever in their intentions. The content of the plan is not changing at present. They plan to implement it as soon as conceivably possible, and the way they've changed the playing field is by compromising those constituent groups that originally expressed their displeasure. They've gone to the part-time faculty and the classified staff and those various people who rely on SMC for their well-being, and they've said, you will lose jobs, you will lose hours, you will hurt if we don't have these classes. And those people are being forced to compromise their ideologies, compromise what they believe in, because people they care about are being hurt. Because the trustees have decided that this is their plan, and they're not going to go with other solutions that would enable them to increase class sizes. They're saying, this is our one option for us to offer more classes. We're not going to give you any other choices, and if you don't go with this, the number of classes is going to go down, and you're going to lose classes at which you can do your jobs. That means decreased hours, and people you care about are going to lose their jobs, and now you're going to be forced to support this program.
Shock doctrine. Shock doctrine.